Good morning, Mr. Manager.
Good morning.
You all set?
I think we're set.
Good.
All right, we're going to talk about the legislative agenda today, and Tanya, I think, has already given you a copy and circulating the room now. Will is going to lead us off with it.
I've got a whole different copy of something else.
Do you?
Okay. For them? Or what I don't know what we're working on.
It's what Kate sent out earlier.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. I believe there's two documents in front of you. One is a legislative request for 2019 non-fire district, and then one for fire district. And unfortunately, I don't think this document's been updated for some time. But Mr. Chairman, how would you like to start? Just go down the list on non-fire?
We'll go through the fire district.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of critical.
So on the fire district, I think this discussion's been going on for months, or if not years at this point. We did get our urban designation, where Sedgwick County has been designated as an urban area. That occurred last year. And so that would allow us now to approach the legislature and ask for some special legislation that would help protect or preserve Fire District Number 1 and kind of prevent the erosion of the district by some of the municipalities here in Sedgwick County. And so the first one would be, for any annexation of land, the land could be annexed, but it would remain part of the fire district. That's something similar to what Johnson County has. So, for example, the city of Wichita could annex land that's in the fire district, but it would remain in the fire district for tax purposes. I think that might be a little bit confusing. The second one would require any city or township in Sedgwick County that does not have a full-time professional fire department to become part of Fire District Number 1. I think that would obviously be fairly controversial with some of the townships that have volunteer fire departments. The third one would prohibit any city or township in Sedgwick County from offering fire districts outside its own boundaries. That'd be kind of like black lining the boundaries, drawing the boundaries kind of in cement permanently, which is similar to number 1, but a little bit different because there are some situations where municipalities could offer fire services outside their boundaries pursuant to a contract. The fourth item on that list would be requiring a fire services agreement in lieu of property taxes with the fire district and any recipient of industrial revenue bonds if the recipient is located in an area which receives fire protection. That's been kind of common practice with Textron and some of the other the deals that I've worked on since I've been here, and I believe historically is what we've done. I think that'd be a little more challenging to make that a state law, but certainly something we could try. And then finally, prohibit any city in Sedgwick County from unilaterally annexing any industrial district. There's a couple different industrial districts I'm aware of that I think are going to expire here in the next 24 months or so.
Hey, one question. We've talked about preparing for any possible consolidation in the future. Are there anything that we need to be looking at for changes to state law to start setting that up if it ever becomes an eventuality?
To be honest with you, I haven't done a whole lot of research on that. I mean, I am familiar with what they did in Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas. Of course, that was a full consolidation of the local government and the county government. I'm not aware of an example where are you talking about consolidating our fire district with Wichita?
With Wichita, possibly Derby.
Okay.
I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I just need to know if we need to start looking at some laws right now that would potentially allow that to happen if we got to that point.
Yeah, I think the urban designation was a good start. We're designated as an urban area. That allows us to go get non-uniform legislation passed. And you could pretty much, obviously we would probably need the city of Wichita to be cooperative, or city of Derby or whoever it is at that point. So,
I know Eric had an outside counsel review consolidation, and there may be something in that summary. Either Karen or Will may want to look at that, or even ask her if if there is something that we need to be looking at for this legislative season.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that
I
document.
just thought with this legislative season coming up in the near future, if there's something we can set it up to make it smoother later on, if we are able to get to that point, that we're already set.
Yeah, I know that the consolidation in Wyandotte County, which is probably the most recent large-scale example in Kansas, ultimately went to a referendum, a vote of the people. And I don't know whether, Shawnee County had a similar referendum maybe 10 or 12 years ago that failed because the people did not vote to consolidate the two governments.
Okay.
So,
well, if we see something that we could start working now, we need to start talking with Wichita and Derby and see if they are on board with any kind of legislative agenda we might put up. Okay. Commissioners, you all have Commissioner Ransow.
Yeah, I've got a lot of these. The last two, I think, is something specifics that I think we could propose and get done. Now, the first three I would be very cautious of. I mean, these are options. I guess what I envision us doing is getting a law passed that would allow us to consolidate, but maintain all the options, not necessarily prescribe as. I think you're going to get some pushback through this. I think you understand what I'm saying. We just need a law that allows us to do it within the and have the flexibility to do these things or not do these things. You know what I mean? And not have it. So I think that take a lot of work to do that with the revisor and whoever would do this. But
that was the conversation I had with you last week, Chairman, was those last two were kind of reflective of where, when we did our fire district workshop at the Extension Center, and in the end where Kathy Sexton started talking about the annexing and IRBs and that discussion. Those last two were kind of the the recommendations that really came out of that is if you're going to do anything, concentrate on that. The first three will be very controversial.
I agree. The first three are very controversial, and if we can work towards consolidation rather than try and do something unilaterally, I think we're better off.
Right. I agree.
Any other commissioners have any comments? All right. I think on the fire one, we probably need to go back and take a look a little more in depth on consolidation type things, and I'm not too sure that we want to push the first three.
We may need to revise this and bring it back to you after I check the outside counsel's assessment.
Okay.
maybe revise the first three into something a little more general.
Yeah, I think the first three are all sort of related to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all trying to limit what other current fire departments that are currently in place can do. So,
Commissioner Unruh?
Well, I don't disagree with any of the comments made, but I just say that item number 2, or the second item down, is a matter of equity to those people in the fire district, those who are paying fire district taxes as compared to those who just are getting a pass. And I don't know how we advance that, but to me, that ought to be a pretty, something we ought to move towards, just for the financial health of our fire district. Now, if the whole issue of consolidation starts moving, well, then that perhaps becomes less of an issue. But the folks with the volunteer fire department may still want to be out even if we consolidate. And
right.
so that's an issue that's got to be settled.
I agree.
How you want to handle it, but.
You know, I think it was fairly apparent at the Extension Center, I don't know when that was, a couple months ago, you know, that there would be some resistance to that, certainly. So,
Yeah, there definitely will be, but it's still the equitable thing to do for Sedgwick County.
I agree. If we can't get consolidation moving, we're going to have to probably do something along line of number 2.
And with consolidation, it's probably going to have to be included. I mean, I don't know how if they could opt out with a volunteer system, even if we consolidate.
do you want to move on to non-fire and then?
I have one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to, on the first one of these lists, in Johnson County, if they've passed a similar policy in Johnson County that land that's annexed by the city remains in a rural fire district. If that's true, I'm curious about the taxes on that. Is the city levying a normal tax rate, and the county continues to levy a normal tax rate like for the fire district? And in other words, properties caught into that are paying a double taxation, if you will, and the county provides the services and levies the taxes, but the city's also levying a tax and not providing services? Is that the way that works?
I'm not exactly sure how the taxes are split up. I believe there's 4 fire districts in Johnson County, and those laws date back to the early 70s where they drew those lines, and so it's a little different situation than we're in. We did meet with Johnson County a few months ago. The fire chief and I did. I can do some research for you on exactly how that. I don't know how the tax bills are sent or what's on them.
I would reference Mulvane's. Mulvane has their own EMS that spans the county line and goes into Sumner County. And because of that, residents on the Sedgwick County side of Mulvane pay regular taxes to Sedgwick County. I guess there's a calculation that happens each year, and we give a rebate, if you will, back to the city of Mulvane for any taxes that we took from the city of Mulvane that would be related to EMS services. So there's a rebate that happens to the city. They should theoretically offset the taxes that they would collect on their own citizens for the same service. And so that's how that works in Mulvane on EMS. There's got to be some kind of a caveat to this, how this would work in terms of some type of recognition that who's providing the service and who's doing the taxes. There ought to be some, because I can't see two jurisdictions charging the normal tax rate and only one of them providing the service. That doesn't sound right to me.
Right.
Something must be done there to make that right.
I would presume, and I'm presuming that the cities are have a separate line item for their fire tax, where City of Wichita definitely does not do it that way.
Right.
So,
well,
and those laws. I mean, when they set those fire districts up, I mean, it was 45, 46 years ago now. So it's just kind of a different dynamic up there. But they have had some growth down in the Gardner area, southern Johnson County, where it has become controversial, where some land was annexed in some of the rural fire districts.
I guess before we put this on any type of actual platform going forward, I'd like to see that the details come forward on how this is done, because this could embarrass us if we don't do it right. Thank you.
Any other questions on fire? All right, Will.
Okay. We got about, I guess, 10 or so items here on the non-fire district. There may have been some that came in after this. I'm not 100% sure. First one would be to permit counties to publish statutory required legal notices on the internet instead of, I think we spend quite a bit of money publishing various legal notices. There would obviously be some resistance probably from the newspaper industry.
Yeah, I think if we go forward with that, we ought to give the option. They could either do it by current method, because some counties, if it's uniform across the state, some counties may want to use the newspaper yet, but other counties may want to use the internet. So we need to put the proposal so that it can be uniform across all of 105 counties.
Okay.
And I think that's been on the KAC's platform and leagues, a municipality's platform for a number of years.
Yeah.
Correct?
I've seen it before.
Yes.
I mean, dating back years ago, but it just hasn't ever really moved. I think the newspapers are able to persuade folks that that's an economic issue for them. Where some of these small town newspapers, maybe even the Wichita Eagle, could say it's going to cause them to go out of business. So. Number 2, permit counties to not send out personal or real property bills if the amount owed is less than $10, and to write off said amount. This came from the treasurer's office. We're spending quite a bit of money sending out bills on nominal amounts. Sometimes I think these go on for years. Where people owe $4 or $5, and we're required under law to send the notices out if they still owe the money, and there's no mechanism to write it off. And that's probably something the Treasurers Association will be the kind of the lead advocate for. But if that's something we wanted to have on our agenda.
I'm not so sure we want to write it off as opposed to add it on to the next bill or something.
Accumulated.
Accumulated. I wouldn't write it off because I mean,
Yeah, I kind of agree with Commissioner Ranzau. Sending out small ones doesn't make any sense, but if they can accumulate it without costing a lot of money for the county, I don't want to, by us trying to figure out how to accumulate it, that it ends up costing more than what it's worth to do that too. The whole idea here is to quit spending money to collect very small amounts of money, but by the same token, we don't want to quit collecting small amounts of money and it costs us more in the long run. So
if
work it out with-
people know that less than $10 will be written off, then you might end up getting a lot of bills paid $10 less. You know, you need to be careful of that at the end of the day.
Well, the way to write that is that they have to pay whatever they owe in full, or so that they can't pay $10 less.
Yeah, I think in some cases these are maybe folks who have moved and these types of things, and you know, I mean, if somebody's moved to Florida and they owe us $8.
Yeah, if you don't pay a bill, and you got to pay everything rather than stop $10 short. So
Well, that's what the law is now, right?
That my understanding.
We bill everything right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That if someone has a $2 bill, we're going to send out 49-cent stamp letter and all the stuff that goes into that. But the justification behind this is to reduce that total cost to the county, and that we're not recouping.
I thought they had a $5.
I think there's $5 on real property or personal property. I'm sorry. Yeah, if it's less, we don't have to send the notice.
Now, if a personal property bill, the original amount is less than $5, and it's written off, and the bill does not go out. So the similar mechanism could be applied to real estate. And I think to your point, Commissioner Ranzau, if it was focused on the original amount of the bill, if that's
And not leftover amounts.
then this would apply.
Yeah.
And when we did some analysis on this, $10 was about the threshold where it was revenue neutral to the county, looking at the cost of sending the bills and what the county would collect. So the other jurisdictions don't have, they're not part of the cost of getting the bill out, and they would see some nominal decrease in what taxes they would collect. So I guess the other question is, if we wanted to accumulate this, if we accumulated without incurring delinquent interest, we didn't send the bill until it
Well,
over 2 or 3 years.
I wouldn't accumulate interest, but if you stick it, if you write it so that it only applies to the original amount as opposed to leftover amount, then that becomes less of a problem.
Okay. Well, I think we need to keep it alive right now and see if we can work out the details.
Yeah, I think the Treasurers Association probably is gonna. It seems like they did something on this last year, so I'll talk to the treasurer later. I don't think she's here today. The third one, provide counties with the same powers as cities to abate nuisance properties and assess the cost to the property owner. We currently don't have that power. For example, the city of Wichita does. They can go abate a nuisance property and then assess those costs to the owner. We don't have the ability to do that out in the county.
Yeah, this is not something I can support. I mean, this fight has been fought in the legislature before. It opens up a can of worms with respect to property rights and stuff. I'm not convinced it's something we really need anyway. We do a lot of stuff, so on. It's been on the KAC's legislative agenda for a while, and it never. Well, they try to go somewhere, and it always gets shot down. And I think we're raising stink about something that I don't think would benefit us all that much anyway. But it puts the people in peril of abuses of the government. So.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's really a policy issue, on how we want to move forward. I mean, there's certainly instances where it would have, we would have been able to use this power. I don't think it's a regular occurrence, but
I think we need MABCD to talk to us a little bit more about this on how it's going to be worded so that we don't, as Commissioner Ranzau says, have an abuse of power, but we still allow neighbors that are living next to problem areas to figure out a way that they can resolve that rather than having to continue to live next to a problem area.
But we have codes to deal with that right now, and there's issues as it is with inspectors being overzealous and this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, we can get some more information from MABCD on,
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to take it off right now.
the fourth item on the list, abolish daylight savings time for the state of Kansas.
I think we should move forward and never go back, but we never did to begin with, or whatever. But
Well, I think we ought to take whatever we have during the summer and just stick with it. I was reading some articles about it
yeah, you would spring forward once and then you'd stop.
and then stop.
Yeah, I agree.
But there are articles out there that talk about the health hazards to springing forward every year. Evidently, Arizona and Hawaii don't have it right now. There's two states that
In
don't,
Indiana.
and some of the protectorates don't have it. So it's not unheard of. I think it ought to be considered at least.
So we want to keep that on the list.
Yes.
This fifth item, I think Tim maybe was going to get us some different language, because this is obtain funding for a regional medical health facility. That's not necessarily, I don't think, what we want to do.
Yeah,
So
I think that we would prefer to have the state operate a regional, operate a hospital, a local behavioral health hospital. We don't want to be the operators.
No.
We don't want to receive the funding.
We want to locate a state
Exactly.
One of the
operated
regional.
and funded facility.
Right.
We'll cover that in this one.
Okay. So we need to redo that, or if it's over here, that's fine. We can drop it off of this one and cover it on the other sheet.
yeah, so that there is so the consensus is that we want the state of Kansas to locate a state mental hospital here.
Regional mental health facility.
The sixth item would be to oppose the dark store theory. This is to make sure the property tax system's reflecting current economic realities and fair market value. We would oppose legislation in this case to artificially limit or alter property tax valuation. I don't necessarily know this is a bill we would propose. We would just state we're opposed to dark store bills.
And I think we all are. Is there any one that's not opposed to the dark store theory?
Well, this talks about we oppose limits to property tax valuations. I don't know that I do. We've tried to pass limits before, and we've supported it as a commission, but I'd have to have some more information before I could support this one here. Particularly if we don't have a specific piece of legislation that we want to introduce. This is something where it depends on what the words are and what it says. I'd have to, I mean, do we anticipate? Are we putting this in here for a read? Do we anticipate something happening?
We already have.
I mean, the legislature.
There was at the end of last session, there was some folks that showed up and did an informational. There was no bill, but they did a kind of a presentation in the Senate committee. These are the folks that would try to be passing a dark store bill in the future. So they've already kind of set the.
Yeah. It's from back when we lost the case with Target.
Well, but that was related to our ability to defend the case to begin with. That's case specific. I wouldn't, if I'm remembering everything right, that we shouldn't use that as a basis for. We had issues in our defense. Was the issue? This was case specific, but nevertheless.
Being applied to more than just Target.
Right.
Target was one.
And Target was the case, but it kind of sets a precedence for other stores to use the same defense now.
I don't think that's the way it hashed out. But discuss that anymore.
And I think this is on the KAC agenda too, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think their plan was to address it in this legislative season session.
We're good on that? Okay.
We'll keep going on that.
The next item would be to permit Sedgwick County to hire retired government workers who are receiving capers without paying the penalty now existing in law. I don't know whether we would want to do that. We could maybe do an urban area just for Sedgwick County, or if you'd want to make that a statewide law. I think there'd probably be some resistance to that from the capers folks for sure.
Well, it came up when we were trying to hire all the social workers that we were putting in the middle schools, and we couldn't go out and hire people that were qualified to do that were retired school teachers, because we can't put them under capers. So it doesn't make sense that we can have perfectly qualified people out there that we can't hire because of a capers rule. So I don't care if it's Sedgwick County alone using the urban designation. It just doesn't make sense to me that if we've got people that we could hire and we can't hire them, that we should be handicapped.
But what's the rationale for the law to begin with? I'm hesitant, without knowing the background on that, to prevent people from double dipping, or what?
I don't know why they couldn't go back under the capers.
Yeah, I mean,
start contributing to capers. I don't know what the solution is, but we need to try and figure out some solutions. We got people out there with master's degrees that would be perfectly great social workers for us, and we can't hire them. It doesn't make sense that you could say, you've got all this education, but we can't use you.
Well, I want to know the background as to why that law's, we can't hire them at all, or we just can't put them into capers. I need to know more detail. This isn't a new situation, so we need to be very.
I think you're affected by that, aren't you, Chairman? Or
I am, but it doesn't make much difference to me. I just can't go under capers.
yeah.
So I'm not in capers.
There's a 30% penalty if we choose to hire someone who is currently retired and receiving capers benefit, and so it makes them cost prohibitive for a number of different types of work that we do.
The intent on that basically is someone will basically continue doing the same job, but initiate their pension as early as possible, and it harms the state's pension system for them to continue doing the same job, same service as they always have been, and initiate their pension. As soon as they hit their rule of 85, they want to retire. A lot of school teachers and others can retire at age 55 with the 30 years of service or whatever. And with doing that, they may work another 20 years, and yet still receive basically full pension benefits that entire, a couple of decades perhaps. And so it's viewed by the state as an abuse of their pension system, and that's why they've got that rule.
Kelly, are you still the chair of Capers?
Yeah, but if you want specific answers, I can get them for you. I'm not going to state the thing.
Mr. Chairman, come on.
I know my limits. I do investments. I oversee your $20 billion. So.
But it would be good to get us the answers on that.
But we're looking
He's the guy with all the contacts with Capers.
Good.
I can tell you that it's not that you can't hire them, but there's penalties, and there's some penalties and some waiting times that have to happen for you to hire that person. It's to discourage someone from basically coordinating a retirement and being rehired to do the exact same job and simply taking advantage of the system.
Yeah. But we're not looking at them in the exact same job. We're looking at them for social workers in Sedgwick County.
For the purposes of the Capers, though, for someone to leave a state job and then come right back into a state job or a government job that would receive those benefits, is trying to discourage a coordinated, taking advantage of a retirement system. They could have stayed on and transferred to a new position and kept their old Capers building, if you will. But once they hit that number, that magic number, they want to retire as soon as possible and then continue government work. It's just trying to discourage gaming the system, so to speak. That's the intent behind that. So I understand both sides. You want to hire somebody because you want to hire them. They're qualified. I get that. So from our perspective right now, this isn't obviously negative, but from the state pension program, they're trying to discourage people from taking advantage of their pension system early. So there's two sides of the story.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we can work something out to solve both sides of the story, I'm for.
I will tell you this:
continuing
there's been bills every single year. It's called working after retirement, and every year I've been aware of the legislature. Last 8 years, they've had bills called working after retirement. They have a strong lobby of government workers that are pushing very, very hard to change the law to allow working after retirement. It hasn't even got out of committee that I'm aware of. I think it's a more difficult subject than maybe we realize. We could certainly put our name on the list and say we would support this because it might benefit Sedgwick County, but it hasn't. It's not like it hasn't been tried. This has been going on for many, many years, trying to get that bill to pass.
Okay. Sheriff.
I will tell you that we're in the process. Well, we've hired retired detention deputies, but it's at a part-time basis, and that's how we've been able to fill some of our ranks on part-time positions of folks that were qualified to do the job 3 times a week. On paper, retirement benefits and that.
It would it benefit you if you could hire them full-time?
We wouldn't have anybody come back overtime. No one's interested in coming back.
Well, let's keep exploring it for right now and try to see if we can work out something. I don't know what the solution is.
Okay, the next item would be permit Sedgwick County to withdraw from CAPERS and authorize Sedgwick County to provide employees with a 401k type of retirement package. I know in the past there has been some research done where if you go back and read when the counties first entered into CAPERS, which was I believe in the 70s, that it said that membership was irrevocable, which I think some attorneys in our office previous to me have opined that means there's no way to get out of it. Of course, the plan has changed drastically since we joined CAPERS. The benefit to for example, the new employees coming on CAPERS 3 versus CAPERS 1 is vast. So I think that'd be really probably more of a question for the courts, because I think if we tried to get out of it through legislation or just unilaterally walking away from it, that there'd probably be a lawsuit.
Well, this would be for new people.
For new people, okay.
Yeah, the author, to allow new people. I've had people, particularly younger people, millennials, who would like to have their own deal, and plus for cost and flexibility, keep it, because if they leave, then it goes with them much more easily. So anyway, it would just be for new people. So those people who are, there'd be a transition period. So
right.
Just to clarify that.
Okay.
And the new people would have a choice between going under CAPERS or
I wouldn't
the
give them a choice.
You wouldn't give them a choice.
No.
Why wouldn't you?
Because we need to move everybody to defined contribution. That's just the fiscally responsible. I mean, there's a reason why they're doing the private sector. Okay, it's more financially sustainable than what we have right now. I mean, the state ought to do it statewide, okay, but they haven't quite been able to get there. They keep CAPERS 1, 2, and 3, okay, but if you really want to have something that can be sustainable and gives the flexibility and the ownership to the employee, that's the way to do it.
But eventually, over time, you're going to pull 3,000 people out of CAPERS, and I don't know what that's going to cost CAPERS.
Well, eventually you're going to bankrupt the state anyway, so you got to do something. I mean, it's just not sustainable. But like I say, those there had to be a transition, because there's a monetary saving there. You could still keep those people who are in it, through that, and then.
But I don't know what your objection would be if the people that were new hires had their choice between CAPERS or a 401k.
Because CAPERS is too rich and it's breaking us. That's why. CAPERS is a rich benefit, and he can't sustain it. That's what he's saying, and he's right.
Somebody write that down.
So I'm going to need more detail. I don't have a problem with us researching this, but I need to talk to Kelly and a few other smart people too and find out what impact that's going to have on the entire thing.
I would say this, that capers for a lot of the younger people that might come into the county are not looking at this as a career. It's pretty well understood that people, these younger folks are expected to have 5 or 6 or 7 5-year jobs. They do here for 5 years and there for 5 years, and so to be vested in the capers takes 5 years, and they may not even be here at that point. To give them that long-term goal to be here for 5 years, it's almost a discouragement to them. If you can give them a benefit in year 1, that they give it. I like the idea of the option, but certainly give them the option at the very least of allowing them to have a benefit that they can start immediately and take with them when they leave that first 5 years and go to their next step up, whatever that happens to be. That actually, in my opinion, is a better competitive thing for our younger workforce. If you want to be competitive, that's what the private sector is doing, and it's because the ideology or mentality of the younger generation perhaps likes these 5-year experiences. You do this for 5 years and that for 5 years, and so for us to think of this as a career, 35 years, there just isn't what they don't think that way necessarily. So it'd be good to have at least have the option.
Well, it may be a moot point if we can't get out of a period. We need legal to find out whether or not.
Yeah, I mean, the word irrevocable is in the statute, which, I think it would be a tough challenge to overcome. But
for new employees,
when we joined Capers,
right,
that was irrevocable.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's what the state statute says. Again, my argument, I'm getting way ahead of ourselves here, but my argument would be, but that was irrevocable on the plan then. The plan's changed now, but there would certainly be legal challenges to any legislation or attempt to leave the plan, I think, even for new employees. So.
Well, we need to cross that hurdle before we can go on and figure anything else out. Yes, sir.
Last year we proposed from the Kansas Sheriff's Association possibility of doing like what the prison system does with capers, and or giving the county the option of being able to put them under KPNF, because they used to be KPNF years and years ago. It's a lot more expensive option, but at least it gave some counties the opportunity if that's how they wanted to retain detention equities. Capers made it very clear it's all or nothing. There was no choice on any of that.
Okay.
So everybody would have to switch over. And my next question is, Mr. Ranzow, when you refer to capers, are you referring to KPNF as well?
No, not necessarily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item would be, I'm just reading this off the sheet, prohibit unilateral annexation by cities, and the counties would have the ability to veto annexation requests. I think that kind of tied into fire a little bit. I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but
That's probably mine. I think counties should have to approve annexation requests of unilateral annexations. I mean, this has been a problem in my district for a long time. If you looked at some of the city boundaries up north, and people getting annexed, and no elected official that represents them has a say in that. That means us, basically. They just do it, and it's a mess. So it creates a lot of resentment and consternation and bad government, and people's taxes go up. They don't get anything for it, and some way you can say the cat's out of the bag, but something needs to be done at some point. I mean, people out in the county need to have elected officials they can come to and say, hey, please help me. This is not good. But it's unilateral, so the city does it. They have a hearing. And, we've had city council members in various places show a lot of disdain for people out in the county and roll their eyes at them and this, that, and another and laugh at them. So, and I'd like to have a voice in that as a county commissioner. The people would like their county commissioner to have a voice in it when they face this. But keep in mind the unilateral annexation is, most annexations are by consent or by request through development and stuff. And that's not what we're talking about. But these are unilateral when people don't want to be annexed, and the city just wants to do it, and they jack up they double their taxes, and
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Let's explore it for right now.
Okay.
I'm not sure I want it on the agenda, but I don't want to take it off yet.
I would modify the language.
To approve?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I would add one thing, that is, I think that Kansas is fairly unique in this. It might be good to have some background in terms of how many states do it the way that Kansas does it. I think we're one of the very few, if not maybe the only one, that actually allows this type of
Bob
annexation.
Parcott had done some research. I think we are the only one.
So that would be a basis for us to maybe address this, because I think that the principle of no representation on a government decision is a concerning thing. But again, if we're the only state that does it this way, that might be a reason for us to have a bigger discussion.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we're concerned about opposition on some of the fire district issues. And I guarantee you there'll be opposition to this in every municipality in the county and the state. So it's just an observation.
Yeah,
Well, but
I would agree.
I'd also point out the very last one in the fire says prohibit any Sedgwick County from unilateral annexing an industrial district.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So that's, I mean, they may oppose that, but that's the same theory, you know. We need to have a say in that.
I'll check to see what Mr. Parnicott had previously done. I mean, I do know in other states that I've been involved in, it's much harder for municipalities to annex than here. That's certainly true. Like in Tennessee, it's almost impossible.
I do think it'd be a better if KAC would take this on as a statewide initiative rather than a Sedgwick County only effort. I mean, it really ought to be a statewide discussion. Okay.
Did we submit this to KAC when we submitted our?
No.
Remember, there's going to be incongruence. The city governments will oppose this, but the people who are affected by it will support it. Okay, so the people the people who have experienced this or might experience it, they want this. The government, the city governments will oppose it because they want the power, the unfettered power to do what they want. Okay, so, I mean, that's where we're at. So we got to decide which side of that issue we want to be on.
And then the final item would authorize counties to enter into turnkey construction agreements with contractors without a requirement of competitive bidding.
Yeah, that's not
So-
accurate.
Yeah, I figured that wasn't exactly what you meant. But
No, it has to do with the design and build. There was some issue
design build stuff. Yeah.
clarifying design and build to make it easier, but there would be a bid to design and build,
Right.
but not have. I don't know all the legal stuff, but in talking to Eric, there were some issues that might need to be clarified in the law. So,
I don't know exactly what it was that you guys were discussing, but we can look at it and discuss it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you're talking about design build.
Design build.
Contracts that
Right.
technically don't work now under competitive bidding because you got to go out and do a competitive bid for the whole project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we'd
You
want
gotta
a
do two,
competitive
you
bid
gotta do
for
two
design
separate.
build. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
you
design
gotta do
build.
two separate instead of one.
Yeah.
But that's how we did the tag office and LATC, essentially.
And then I don't have anything else on the agenda. I did. The chairman just gave me the chamber's legislative agenda, which I haven't had time to
Before we go on
review.
to that, we talked a couple times about some election issues that didn't show up on here, whether people could vote anywhere on the election day. Because our machines are capable of being able to vote anywhere. And we talked about that, but didn't make it on here.
On the KAC, or request to KAC, it says permit counties to set up vote centers throughout the county for both early voting and election day voting so that any voter can go to any of the vote centers and cast their vote.
Yeah.
It's on there. but
Okay, no,
we haven't-
I think it needs to be on our legislative agenda. And I talked to Tabitha about it, and she supports it. Was there anything else on our KAC legislative agenda that wasn't on this one?
We still have to go through tens.
Yeah.
Well,
Regional mental health facility. Express the desire that KC discontinue its legislative efforts to expand
Before you go on to the cities, do you want to cover the other areas that were submitted to us?
I don't believe I have that sheet.
I put that together. I'll go over that real quickly. The Association of Community Mental Health Centers puts together a legislative agenda, and I went through that. There's 14 items. They're all long and wordy and complex. I went through and identified what I think are the 8 most important for us here in Sedgwick County, and I put them on this document here. The first one is related to the vending machine lottery funding. There was $1.8 million put into the 19 budget for community crisis centers, and the funding was tied to that lottery vending, but the lottery vending bill did not pass. There is a commitment to pay for community crisis centers with $1.8 million in SGF, and so we just want to encourage them to hold to that commitment and not let them say, well, we didn't pass lottery vending, so we can't fund those crisis centers. It's important that they continue funding crisis centers. There's the SGF available to make that happen. And then,
Tim, did that get vetoed? I thought it did pass.
It vetoed, correct. Yeah, it passed, but it was vetoed.
And why was it vetoed?
Because these lottery vending machines, they look like games, and I think there was a concern that kids were going to just put dollar bills in them.
It was more about the gambling component than it was the behavioral health component. I don't think it was vetoed because it supported mental health services. It was,
I think it was about regulation.
Gambling
right?
component, yeah.
Like Oklahoma, they're just next to pop machines and stuff.
So the important thing there is that the state recognizes that they need to fulfill their commitment to community crisis centers, no matter where the funding comes from. And then the other items are items for the 2019 and 20 budgets. Supporting continued support for community crisis center funding is going to be critical for the success that we have currently and any future growth that we do with our behavioral health expansion here. We would like to see an increase in access to housing resources. There are some codes related to housing that if those codes would be opened up by KDHE and the state Medicaid plan, it would help house individuals coming out of the state hospitals and coming out of the community crisis center. Housing is an incredible barrier for individuals in dealing with their behavioral health issues, and so support for that change in the state Medicaid plan would be very beneficial to us in our community. We'd like to see an enhanced rate for the services that we provide through Medicaid. Those rates have been static for probably 12 or 15 years now. It's probably time to increase those rates. So the fourth one on the down, or the fifth one down on the first page, talks about the need to continue to support the inpatient psychiatric system that the state's responsible for. This language here really is pretty much about protecting what is in existence, not going backwards anymore. Then if we turn the page, we would benefit from increased residency programming at the KU School of Med. I think all of our psychiatrists are KU graduates, and whenever we've got an opportunity to host residents here at ComCare, there's some state funding that helps pay for them to do their residency here. We have a really good shot at retaining them once they graduate, bringing them aboard. If those residency slots aren't paid for at CMHCs, we're never going to get an opportunity to expose them to our work environment, and we'll miss out on them. And there's a shortage across the state for psychiatrists, and we would like to make sure that the residency program continues to be supported because it's a great feeder into the system. We'd like to oppose any efforts that would destabilize public mental health services. There are occasionally there's a desire to open up particularly behavioral health codes to a broader network of providers. When that happens, it reduces the funding capacity for CMHCs, and CMHCs are the only entity that is obligated to deliver mental health services without regard to ability to pay. So if we dilute the payment to CMHCs like ComCare and other CMHCs across the state and continue to demand that they provide services to individuals without a payer source, that just increases the burden locally on our local tax support system. So we'd like to make sure that they don't broaden the network any further. And then last is to support recommendations in the Mental Health Task Force. That report talked specifically about regional state hospitals. It had a number of different recommendations. The one that's most important to us here locally is regional state hospitals, or a regional state hospital, and so that supports kind of what we had on the larger list as well. I don't know if you want to include any of these items, if you want to shorten these items, get them into the county's legislative agenda, but there are a couple of them that are really pretty important to what we do here through ComCare.
Very good. So, any discussion on the items that were put together by Tim?
Yeah, my suggestion would be to prioritize them. That way, if we need to make a decision to shorten everything down, we know what the highest.
Okay.
Because one of the reasons we've gone to shorter is so that we didn't have a whole long list of a lot of stuff. But I'm not saying we'll need to, but if we decide to do that, knowing what the highest priority are would be helpful.
Commissioner Unruh?
Well, I appreciate a short agenda. I think that's always more effective. However, these relate to the core of what we do. It's a big part of our budget, a big part of our effort, and these things seem to give a good overview of what we do and what the needs are. So I would be reluctant to reduce it in any way, but try to advance it, even though shorter is better. But this is pretty important to what we do.
Any other comments on Tim's? I agree. These are critical items that we do in Sedgwick County. We need to make sure that we can support our efforts in behavioral health.
I guess I have one question. Now that the sheriff's in here, isn't there a issue that you wanted to add that's kind of related to this in terms of keeping the inmates on Medicaid as they go through the process of in and out of the jail?
You're talking about suspension.
Yes.
Compared to termination. I got an email from Chase Boise last week, and that particular item has been resolved now.
It's okay. All right, thank you. No.
It has.
Yes.
When did that occur?
I'd have to look up the email again, but basically it was sent to a committee, and KDHE has agreed to use fine system, which is linked to all the sheriff's offices in the state of Kansas. We'll report to them. This person is in our custody. Basically, they'll show them as suspended. As soon as they're released, we report back to KDHE, and it will turn it back on for them to be able to have that.
Awesome.
That's good news. Yeah.
Yeah, super. Hey, I gave Will, and I haven't read it myself, I just printed it off about 2 minutes before we walked in the door. I gave him the legislative agenda from the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if you want to go through or just make copies and provide all the commissioners, or how you want to do it. But
Yeah, I'll make copies. I'll just read the headings. They've got a lot of individual items. They've got several state budget items, some taxation items, economic development, environmental resources, investment-friendly business environment, regulatory environment, transportation, education and workforce development, and that's it. Those are kind of their 1, 2, 3, about 6 areas there. If anybody wants me to dive into those areas, or I didn't see this until right before the meeting started, so.
And I haven't read it either, but I think we need to provide it to the commissioners so that they have a chance to take a look at it.
I'll scan it in, send it to everyone.
Good. While we're talking about legislative agenda, Sheriff, do you have anything that we haven't included on this that you need for the Sheriff's Department? Okay. And anything from Register of Deeds that we need to include?
Just an update on that land property thing. We are working with our respective associations on some minor tweaks to some legislation. That's where we're at on that.
Okay, so between the clerk and Register of Deeds, we are going to look at something so that people, if they're in prison and other places, can't file.
That is our hope.
That's your hope.
Yeah, we've been working between the processes when we start in the register of deeds office and then come to our offices and first now. And, where our associations are, little change, as little changes as possible to accomplish what we think we need to do. So we're still working on that.
Okay, well, I know it applies to both of your organizations. I just want to make sure that we're supporting you in your efforts. Anything else that come out of either one of your offices that we need to worry about? Very good. Okay, any other legislative items that we need to talk about before we go on to other items? I don't see anything. Before we adjourn, we want to appreciate all the effort from Public Works over the weekend to getting our county roads cleared out. Do you want to talk about Ray a little bit?
Well, we went out 3:30 a.m. Monday morning, hitting the roads. Ray, one of our, he's the head of our all of our dump trucks, but he operates a lot of equipment. He was on a high loader and he was getting off of it. It was shut down. He was getting off, and these are high. Call them high loader. There's a ladder, and he got down to the last step. He slipped, fell backwards, and hit his head. It was pretty bad, and we got him to the hospital. They kept him overnight, and I've been checking my phone. He is talking, but they did a CAT scan, and there's blood on the brain. So haven't heard anything back this morning. So we're all watching that carefully.
Good. Well, I'm sure that all the commissioners want you to keep them up to speed on what's going on there, and we'll keep them in our prayers.
Okay. We also had a wreck at 167th and 21st. Don't know if it was a slick spot. We have people going out there to look at that and make that determination. So.
Okay. Sheriff, do you have any details on that accident?
Yeah, it's very icy. Junior in high school from Goddard hit the icy area, went sideways, hit by eastbound.
So it's mainly ice out there that caused the problem? Okay.
There's 600 miles of roads to cover. It's hard to get them all real quick. We concentrate around, the heavier traffic roads, and plus we do around the aircraft factories and major plants, get that top priority, and then we move out from there.
Okay. Very good. All right. Any of the staff have anything today that we haven't covered that we need to talk about? Anyone in the back of the room? Mr. Manager, do you have anything else for us today?
That's it.
Very good. I guess we're adjourned then. Thank you all.